there's a new scam popping up all across the country. It's not quite senior citizens giving away their social insurance numbers or AI hacking into bank accounts or a big heist, but it's still going to cost Canadians billions.
Smash and grab job, huh? Slightly more complicated than that.
Here's the setup. The Liberals have a disastrous policy in the carbon tax that Canadians are sick and tired of. Along comes Mark Carney. The Liberal establishment is going to anoint him as their next leader. All will be well. The problem, he's been advocating for carbon taxes his entire life. So here's the play. He'll get the entire Liberal Party to say they don't believe it anymore. He'll deny everything he's ever said, get the media to cover for him, and convince 40 million people that he doesn't believe in the carbon tax anymore and walk right out the front door.
You do the math. Exactly.
Now, why is this such a scam? First, let's take a look at who Mark Carney is.
I'm connected. I can deliver for the country. My weakness is, people will charge me as being elitist or, a globalist, to use that term, which is, that's exactly, it happens to be exactly what we need.
Mark Carney is literally defined by his love of the carbon tax. He wrote a book called Values, where he explains what motivates him as a human being. Now, if you're going to jot down a few things about what defines you as a person, what value do you live by, you might say things like, my word is my bond, or family first.
Let's say that.
But this is a guy who put pen to paper, who sat down and typed out a book of what defines him. On page 440, he said that Justin Trudeau's carbon tax was, quote, a model for the world. In fact, the only time he's ever even criticized Trudeau's carbon tax was when he said it was too low.
Now, so far, carbon prices have been applied sparingly. They've been set far too low.
He actually spoke out against giving an exemption to people whose home heating bills had shot through the roof to the point where they couldn't afford to keep their homes warm in the winter. That's who Mark Carney is. He didn't stop there. He didn't just write a book and forget about it. He went on a global speaking tour, visiting all kinds of countries, speaking to audiences in New York, London, Washington, Davos.
Far too many fossil fuels in the world. We're going to have enormous stranded assets, half of gas, 3/4 of coal, etc. Maybe up as much as half of oil reserves, proven reserves, need to stay in the ground if we're going to get to where we are. But we also have...
In fact, he's more of a carbon tax missionary, going around the world trying to convert people to believe that the carbon tax is somehow a good thing. And now, all of a sudden, after all of that, after years of his life being spent and devoted to sell the carbon tax to other governments and to voters in other countries, now on the eve of an election, he's gonna suddenly try to convince you that he can rebrand it, change the name, and you won't notice? Let me give you an example of how he's gonna try to pull off this scam. Here he is talking about how you won't notice it on something like steel.
Not that we as taxpayers pay, but the large polluters pay. And so what happens...
But does that not ultimately trickle down?
No, because what the big companies are producing, by and large, are not products that we are consuming. There's some element of that, but by and large, a steel company, how much steel are you using these days, Todd?
How stupid is that? Just because you might not order a truckload of steel ingots doesn't mean you don't pay for higher steel costs. Obviously, he knows there's steel in household appliances, in cars, in your home framing, and all kinds of things. But here's what he believes. He believes the problem with the carbon tax is that you notice it. And Canadians are sick of it. So what he's going to do is he's going to bury it. That's the scam.
It was staged. Somebody made a duplicate of my vault. And what we saw on the monitor wasn't actually happening.
He's going to hide it in your utility bills. He's going to hide it in the cost of production of everything you buy, and shipping, and transportation, and commodities. In fact, he's even got a new name for the carbon tax.
We need to use effectively a shadow carbon price, meaning that you map into a representative carbon price the impact of, for example, an emissions regulation.
A shadow carbon tax? Buried in prices and hoping that you won't notice? That is a scam.
You're either in or you're out, right now.
To pull this off, they're putting a whole crew together. Let's look at some of the people who are lining up to support him. There's Trudeau's radical environment minister, who once threatened to quit if there were any more carve-outs given on the carbon tax.
I've been following his career for many years. We've worked together at the United Nations together, so I've known him and I trust him and I have great faith in his abilities.
He believes with every fiber of his being in the carbon tax, and he's endorsed Mark Carney. Why? Because he knows that whatever Mark Carney says during a leadership race or an election, that under the Liberals, the carbon tax will still be there. Or look at Trudeau's natural resource minister, who's also endorsed Mark Carney. He had this to say.
I don't think you're going to see a lot of fundamental changes. I'm still a believer in the consumer carbon price in the sense that it is the most economically efficient way to actually reduce emissions.
That's not nothing. He's in Washington, D.C., defending and promoting the carbon tax. Now, why are they endorsing Mark Carney? Because they know with him, it's not going anywhere.
You think we need one more? You think we need one more? All right, we'll get one more.
The last, and maybe even the most important member of this crew, is the media. Mark Carney can't pull this off without them. They put on the kid gloves during interviews.
It still sounds to me, though, that there's an opportunity for companies to pass that on to consumers.
Well,
Or, more often than not, just help them straight up lie to Canadians.
The Conservatives trying to keep their axe the tax lines alive, despite the fact that Carney and Pierre Poilievre have basically the same position on the key issue.
These are just outright lies.
We've already shown several times Mark Carney speaking publicly about how all he's going to do is hide the carbon tax, change its name, call it a shadow carbon tax.
We need to use effectively a shadow carbon price, meaning that you map into a representative carbon price the impact of, for example, an emissions regulation.
So why are reporters lying and trying to make it seem like Conservatives and Mark Carney have the same policy? Because they're in on it.
Look, I mean, there's a bit of a love affair going on as well, let's be honest, right? I mean, maybe three great love affairs in history: Romeo and Juliet, Will and Kate, and the national media and Mark Carney.
You don't suddenly change your values on the eve of an election. You don't define yourself as a human being for years and years of your life fighting for a policy that you claim is the most important for our lifetime, and then suddenly change. What they're going to do is they're going to run this scam right up until the election. And then when they don't need your vote anymore, but they still need your money, they're going to go right back to hiking the carbon tax. They thought they were going to get away with it. Carney thought he had the perfect con, but he wasn't counting on one important thing: you. Millions of Canadians realizing that no matter what Liberals call it, no matter how they try to hide it, you will always pay it. Whether it's Justin Trudeau's carbon tax or Mark Carney's shadow carbon tax, Liberals will keep raising it and you will continue to pay more. The only way to protect yourself from this scam is to change governments and elect a common sense Conservative government that will simply axe the tax once and for all. And as always, thanks for watching.